I'm joined today by Kevin Sinnott, author of The Art and Craft of Coffee and the creator and host of CoffeeCon, the Consumer Coffee Festival. It's so great to have you on. I think a lot of people drink coffee. Many people have lots of questions about coffee. And one that I want to jump right into is about Fairtrade coffee. What is Fairtrade exactly? And is it really that fair?
Well, the concept is a great concept, and the idea is everyone in a certain region, I guess, region's the wrong word, that's too large. Let's say everyone in a neighborhood pools their coffee together, and the idea is that you get a better deal. And there's a third party involved called a fair trade trader, I guess, and that person is supposed to oversee the deal so that it's good for the farmers and good for the people who are buying the coffee, who are roasters. The challenge with it, David, is that, well, first of all, there's always the challenge in the coffee business. I'm sorry to say that sometimes introducing a third party in the middle increases the risk that the farmers don't get paid rather than lessens it. So that's obviously not the majority of cases, but that's one factor that I hear from farmers occasionally. The other thing is, ideally, if there's a better deal for farmers, and that's direct trade, and that's where they actually sell directly to the roasters. It seems like they have a better chance of making all the money, and they get a better deal for them. So that's kind of, you'll hear direct trade roasters touting that. So I would say direct trade is ideal. On the other hand, a farmer has to be a certain size usually to get a direct trade deal.
Yeah, I
So
recently spoke
fair
to a
trade is
roaster
more.
who does the direct trade route, and they said, the prices they gave me were that fair trade is really only raising the amount that is paid to the farmer from in the low dollar and change range to the high dollar and change range, and that some piece of that is actually going to the third party organization, as you mentioned, that apparatus that manages the fair trade status, so that it is sort of a label that they don't feel actually tells us very much about how fair the prices being paid are.
To put it in show business terms, it's a manager. A great manager gets you more gigs, and your career does better, and they negotiate a great deal for you. On the other hand, if you're a farmer that is capable of negotiating your own deals, you're probably better off with direct trade.
Okay, all this makes sense. Let's now talk about coffee and health. Coffee and health seems to be studied endlessly. Coffee is sometimes great for you, sometimes it's bad for you. Then it's good as long as it's 2 to 3 cups a day, but not more than four, or just 1 cup of coffee a day is really great, but beyond that, we have no idea. How do you, as a coffee expert, sort of navigate all of the different opinions and so-called studies about the health impacts of coffee?
Yeah, I'm actually, my background isn't science, my background is history. So I tend to approach it more from a historic point of view, that coffee drinkers on average live as long or longer than non-drinkers. So I think coffee is at worst inert. And yes, once in a while you'll hear some claims about um, antiviral and different effects of coffee that may be good for you, using modern, I guess, health concerns, and looks at studies that are done. However, I'm always I'm really resistant to and reluctant to consider coffee itself a so-called health drink.
Hmm.
It seems like it's got some good qualities. On the other hand, people have to be careful, A, what they put into their coffee, which can change those things, and B, what they have along with their coffee, which is probably, something, coffee seems to be forever sold with things that are sweet and while they're delicious, may not be considered health
Right.
foods.
If you're having a half
So
dozen bear claws with your cup of coffee, that will have an impact if that's what you're doing every time. What's the hot thing right now? I mean, people at homes like to have their French presses. Turkish coffee with the grounds in it is being served at
Yeah.
more and more places and more countries around the world, although it doesn't seem to be too popular in the US so far. I was at a place yesterday that had the pour over method, which to me just seemed like you're dripping the coffee from 6 inches instead of 1 inch. I didn't totally understand what the difference was. What's the popular thing now in the coffee world?
Well, I'd say the pour over is the drink of the week. Um, and and there is a difference, by the way. I'm going to defend the pour over a little bit from
Please.
the Mr. Coffee pour over is an attempt, a crude attempt, I might add, to automate what was a manual method. And there are the benefit of the hand pour is that you can see and time things so that all the grounds get nicely extracted and the timing and everything so that you don't put too much water in because then there's a lot of water in there that's cooling. And what you want to do is just have enough water that it keeps all the grounds covered.
Hmm.
And you do get, I think, a significantly better cup. Now, as I say this, there are automatic methods that are now improving and getting more flexible and even programmable so that they're better emulating what a great barista could do. But so far, I think the barista wins.
All right. So now there's two areas of big controversy around coffee. One is Keurig machines. The other is chain coffee places like Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks. Let's talk about the second one first. Are
Okay.
Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks providing good coffee? When I've completely stopped going to those places because I just find that there is nothing at all redeeming about ordering a cup of coffee at Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts. I prefer the local mom and pop style coffee places.
I prefer a local person for non-taste reasons. It has to do with the same reason I will always call a contractor in the local paper instead of a chain for almost anything. That's just my personal bias. But I definitely have to say there's a difference between the two chains. While Dunkin' Donuts does a lighter roast, I prefer a lighter roast personally,
Hmm.
generally. Starbucks actually does buy some of the coffees that we're talking about that are fair trade, direct trade. They have shown a better social uh, consciousness, both for the growers and sustainability here at home, which I think is oftentimes not good. You know,
Hmm.
they do try to provide things for their employees. So, on a social justice point of view, I see a big difference between Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts, certainly Starbucks and McDonald's.
Interesting.
Now,
Okay.
back to the cost, or rather the taste. I would agree. Starbucks has chased automation to a degree that you really don't get best a barista can do in the average Starbucks experience, and you don't get and that roast is so dark. There are some coffees where I feel like, wow, they've roasted off that distinctive flavor.
And of course, Starbucks is inextricably linked to these frappuccino and blended with chocolate syrup and whipped cream and all this other stuff that has become quote coffee over the last 10 or so years. Is that just absolutely crazy to you that coffee has
Um,
become these 600 calorie drinks, or is it hey to each their own?
and there's a middle ground on this, and I I'm going to choose a path that's a little bit controversial on both sides. On the one hand, if you're drinking coffee that is what the caramel macchiato that I had
Right.
once, I ordered a macchiato, and a macchiato is actually is supposed to be, at least originally, was an espresso with a little bit of milk in it. It's perfect for someone like me. I don't mind a little milk taste, especially in the morning
Sure.
and with the coffee. But but I got this thing that was pre-sweetened and had all kinds of syrup, gooey. So
It's an
that
abortion.
I don't care for. Is it barely? It's barely coffee. Certainly, it's coffee flavored, and certainly I do believe I believe the consumers should be able to decide what they want. I'm not for having coffee legislation.
No,
But
certainly not.
definitely, on the other end, some of my friends, and we get a lot of these people at CoffeeCon too, and I love them. Of course, they buy tickets, but they have an attitude that no one can have anything in their coffee. I suspect if these people were into chocolate, they'd be eating baker's chocolate.
Right. Yeah. It's the idea that you're affecting the sanctity and purity of the coffee if you put even a drop of sugar or a little bit of cream in it, which seems crazy. Um,
Dave,
in the
can
very
you
limited
imagine?
time we have left, I want to get your thoughts on Keurig. I think Keurig is a disaster environmentally. I think Keurig is a disaster in terms of the coffee quality. And I think that it is incredibly overpriced on a price per pound basis when you look at Keurig. What do you think about Keurig type machines?
Well, the cost itself is, I'm gonna go backwards. The cost is ridiculous. I mean, you can drink the coffee. I'm gonna tell your audience, you can drink the coffee I drink, and I buy the most expensive coffee uh, there is, and I am you are paying as much, if not more, than I am, and you're getting kind of the probably the lowest tier of at least specialty coffee,
Sure.
meaning it's not great. Second of all, as far as the environmental aspect, the original product is horrible and inexcusable. Shocking that it came from a company that used to have such a great reputation in the specialty coffee business like Green Mountain. The third thing, however, there's a cure for that. There are some products now, even Melita makes a 100% recyclable product.
Right.
So just seek that out, do a little research. Everyone's got Google now, so you don't even have to buy a book of mine or something to find out. There are some responsible products out there that reduce the waste. The third thing is the taste. The taste is, think about where we were. We had machines that took 14 minutes to make a pot of coffee. People threw out most of it, hopefully. I don't know about the health effects of that coffee, but it didn't taste good. Keurig machine, if anything, under extracts. It doesn't have as much bitterness generally. However, it is inherently stale, and that is a problem. You've got to buy to be a member of kind of our club. Ideally, want to grind your own beans, and you
Sure.
want beans that are roasted within 2 weeks. Let's go a month just to make it doable. But that's really compared to cups that are they're probably roasted a year ago. When you see them in the supermarket, yeah, it's a big difference.
Spot on analysis. Kevin, how many cups of coffee a day do you drink out of curiosity?
I drink. I actually drink two in the morning. I usually have one after lunch, and I have one in the evening because I do a late shift where I always write at night. I like to write at night. It's quiet, dark.
All right. Kevin Sinnott, 4 cups of coffee a day. You heard it from him right here. Check out the art and craft of coffee and check out CoffeeCon, the Consumer Coffee Festival. Kevin, thanks for being on with us.
David, a pleasure.